It's still 2020, and you're listening to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking, episode 85. Welcome. I'm your host, Susie Botello. If you thought that mobile filmmaking is just about learning to shoot video, buying gear, learning apps and audio, well, you would be partially correct. When you engage with your audience, whether it's an audience of one or an audience of thousands, you're sharing your perspective, and it only takes a few seconds to either hook or lose your audience's attention. This is why story is everything. Not only do you captivate your audience's attention with a good story, but once you do that, you have the power to introduce a new perspective, a new way to look at something. And if you want them to keep it with them and even act on it, then you need to make them feel it, because emotion is a big part of it. Our guest in this episode is Ant Pruitt. Ant is passionate about stories, and he's a photographer. But also, he can share a story with one image. Ant Pruitt is a master jack of all trades when it comes to multimedia. Ant is his own brand. He is a photographer, a digital artist, and much more. In this episode, you'll listen to his story on how his Droid smartphone and a walk around the pond enlightened him in a way that lit the path to his future. Today, he's part of the team for Twit TV. His videos share insight in full detail to mastering photography and other media. And if you go to his website, anttruitt.com, that's ANTPRUITT.com, Ant Pruitt, you will find some of his incredible work. So if you're ready, let's begin this insightful and inspiring conversation with Ant Pruitt himself. Hey everyone, I've got a special guest here. You may have heard of Ant Pruitt, and Ant is my guest here today, coming at you from Northern California. Hi, Ant.
Hey there, Miss Susie. How you be?
I'm doing great. That's right. You do call me Miss Susie, don't you, Mr. Ant?
That is correct.
I would like for our listeners to get to know a little bit about you. But before we do that, share a little bit with our listeners about your connection with mobile phones. If you haven't heard of Ant Pruitt before, just to let you guys know, he is the jack of all trades. I call him Master Jack.
I can live with that because I'm definitely not a guru.
And he's a pro in photography, graphics design, audio, video, more. I'll let you share a little bit about that. But first of all, share with us. You know, I lied earlier when I said I wanted you to talk about the mobile stuff first. I'd rather you introduce yourself first, just for our audience's sake, so they know who they're listening to.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll introduce myself. I am Ant Pruitt. I am a professional photographer as well as a professional podcast host. I do a lot of photography, video, and tutorials, and I also host a podcast for Twit TV. My show is called Hands-On Photography, and as well as a couple other shows on the network, Hands-On Wellness, This Week in Google, and Hands-On Tech. Just like we said, I dabble in a little bit of everything. And I think I do well enough in all of those fields, but I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a total badass at one thing in particular.
Even though I can tell you guys he is. Actually, you're a badass in every aspect of this stuff. I've been watching. I've been listening to the podcast
Thank you.
for a while, and it's actually the one Twit the what is it called, Twit Tech, something
Twit
like that.
TV.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So when I first listened to that, I was like, well, you know what? I'm getting in bed for this one. It's 2.5 hours or something like that, right?
Yeah, we do. We do have some long form shows on the network. The Twit TV is a podcast network that has, man, I don't even know how many shows we have. I think there's about 20 shows.
Gosh, I would say about 700 or something.
That we broadcast throughout the week. And some of them are long form shows. Some of them are roundtable discussions that last about 2 hours once a week. Then there's other shows that are just an hour long. And then there's shows like mine that are the quick hitter shows, air quotes, quick hitters, where I take up about 10 to 15 minutes of your time. Unless I get long winded, I have gone for 45 minutes. But I try to keep them short and sweet, something, around 10 to 15 minutes, just to give you the meat of the subject at the time. And if I have to go a little bit longer, I typically just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to stop right here, tune in, and we'll talk about this next week.
Awesome. Well, the stuff that this podcast talks about, it's all about tech for the most part. And in a way, it's like current news in tech, too.
Mm-hmm. Right. And see, Twit TV, that's TWIT. That's short for This Week in Tech. Mr. Leo Laporte started this many, many years ago. I'm thinking it's been about 15 years, somewhere along those lines. And the flagship show that comes on Sundays is called Twit, This Week in Tech. And we base a lot of our content throughout the week on consumer technology, whether it's the latest iPhone, the latest Samsung phone, the latest MacBook, the latest Chromebook, Android device. It's all consumer tech related. And we do have some enterprise level tech discussions on there, whether you get into security, like information security, or enterprise IT.
Yeah.
Where you're dealing with databases and software as a service and encryption and all of that. I mean, we cover the gamut pretty well regarding the world of technology. Even have a lot of open source and Linux-based discussions as well. For people that like to use Linux instead of using Windows or Mac, we have a show dedicated to free open source software that comes on every Wednesday.
Yeah, it's almost like opening up a magazine. Where you go to somebody's house and you pick up that magazine, and then next thing you know, you're like sitting there, you're like cover to cover, basically.
Still scrolling. Yep.
Yeah, it's all really interesting, and it's quite entertaining because, as we were talking about perspective earlier, right. You have, especially with the roundtable, you have the different perspectives from different people, and you guys sometimes debate things there, and I find it really entertaining. It's almost like hanging out. You know what I mean? So,
and that's the thing. That's been the approach that the network has tried to continue to have over the many years. Because I've only been working there. It will be officially a month in September of 2020. Wow. That I've been an employee there, but I've been a fan for well over 10 years, and throughout those 10 years as a fan, I've seen how Twit has tried to put the shows out in the format of being conversational, discussion based, and not necessarily a news broadcast, if you will. Now, granted, we do have a news show that comes on every week, hosted by my two coworkers, but even that is a little bit more discussion based. It's just a whole different approach, and it makes it a little bit more personal, yet we're still authoritative in our message. People come there to find out what's been going on because we have the knowledge in a lot of the stuff regarding tech, and we share our perspectives as well as share the facts.
It's pretty amazing. How cool is that though, Aunt, that you're a big fan of the show for like 10 years, right? And then
Yeah.
you get to be on the show. How did that happen? If you don't mind.
Oh wow. It's a long story, but I will try to give you the short version, the abridged version. Um, I started out, I got interested in photography again several years ago, back when I had this smartphone. No, actually, it was a little bit before that. But the smartphone really made me more interested again, and it was with the Droid X Android phone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that phone or however many years ago that was, but that phone just sort of piqued my interest. And I started to shoot more with it and share more things, more of the video or photographs that I was shooting. And people started to notice it. And then I started blogging about it, and people started to notice the blog. And there was a particular blog that I started reading years ago. And for me, when I'm reading different websites, whether it's CNN or whatever, I don't read CNN often, but whatever website
Yeah.
that I'm reading, and if something prompts me to comment on it, I will comment on the site, because I know that writer likes to get the feedback. They want to know, okay, what did I write and how did you enjoy it? And so this particular site that I was reading at the time, found myself commenting pretty regularly. And I got a message from the editor in chief, and they was like, you know what, you could come write for us. You keep commenting on the site, you might as well just just write for us. And that just started this whole snowball effect of opening some other doors on the side of freelance technologists and freelance, just covering different stories, whether it be enterprise IT or photography or mobile video, what have you, just whatever I was interested in. And it just led to writing at Tech Republic. And then that led to getting an interview on Twit TV. They read an article that I had written for techrepublic.com about drone video, and said, hey, would you like to be on the show this week? And we interview you about this article, and you can share your tips, so on and so forth. And then it just kept growing from there. And I was a guest on that on that network a lot more often, whether it was just to sit in on one of those 2-hour shows or just to share my tidbits on a particular segment. And the relationship just kept growing, and they reached out to me and was like, hey, yeah, would you like to join the team? And I'm thinking, yeah. And so ever since then, like I said, it'll be a year, September 2020. And if anyone asks me about it, I always tell them the same thing. I am living and working my dream. It is. It's just, I have no complaints. I get up every day, even during this pandemic, and I walk in here to my little home studio and I start working. But at the same time, I realize I am working and living my dream.
And that means that there are not enough hours in a day for you to get and play as much as you want to, right?
I have no comment on that. No, I do. I do fairly well with it, because prior to coming to Twit, I've been in the enterprise IT side of things. I worked in IT for 17 years, I think, something like that. And most of my professional career, I was working at home, because I could just get more done working at home and not in an office dealing with the stupid politics of an office and interruptions and things like that. So I worked at home most of the time. So I'm used to just being in here and putting on my work hat, if you will, and getting down to business. It's just no big deal to me. I mean, I literally, well, not recently, but most of the time I get up and I get dressed as if I'm going to the office or going to the studio, even though my studio is just 20 feet from my bedroom,
Well, yeah, and you never know what can happen. Just like in an office where, all of a sudden you got to go meet with somebody or something like that. You don't want to say, well, hold on, let me take a shower, let me get dressed, let me, you know what I mean?
Yep. So I just carry on. It's just, it's just like any other person that would get up and make the commute to their workplace,
Yeah, I've been self-employed for many, many, many years. A lot of times I worked in somebody else's office, though, and then I could work at home. And I have a pretty good work ethic, I think, because I've been able to maintain it. But my attitude has just been the same. So when this pandemic hit, I remember people saying, oh my God, I got to stock on this and that. I'm like, I've been living on Costco for a long time because, when you're self-employed, you don't get like, your budget is different.
Right. It's no big deal for you. This is the norm.
Right. You always buy, 36 rolls of toilet paper at a time. But anyway, let me ask you this really quick here.
Sure.
Let me not ask you this really quick. Let me ask you a very kind of important question on what, because you were talking about your Droid phone and you mentioned photography and you mentioned a little bit of video. Tell us about what mobile did for you. And then if you don't mind somehow tying that into your passion for stories.
Sure. Well, that mobile phone, I can remember the shot that I took, and if I could find it, I would send it to you. But I remember the photograph that I took. I was taking a little 10-minute smoke break, or whatever you want to call them. You know how every office place has the 10-minute breaks that you can take.
Yeah.
I don't smoke, but I took the break anyway.
Right.
And I went out, and we had a little pond in the back of the facility, and it just had a nice little walkway so you could walk around and get some laps in. And so I'm walking around the pond, and it was just a beautiful day. The sun was just perfect. Wasn't super cloudy, wasn't super bright. It was just perfect. And I snapped that shot with my Droid X. And later on that night, I shared it online somewhere. I guess it was Flickr or something. I don't know, but I shared it online, and people loved it. And so I said, I'll try this again another day. And I tried it again another day because it just felt right and everything looked right. Snapped it, shared it again, and people was like, wow, that looks really good. And so I'm thinking, well, Aunt, you might be pretty good at this. So I just kept shooting and kept going out there. And then I realized that phone shot HD. I think it was 720p at the time. And I said, wow, so if I can shoot video with this, what can I do with it? So I would shoot little random videos of my family and figured out how to edit clips together using Windows Movie Maker, and just had a bunch of little random clips and what little cuts and things like that. And people was wondering what kind of camera you had. And I said, my phone. And it was like, you did that with a phone? I said, yeah, this is HD. Why can't I do it with the phone? And it just sort of clicked for me that I'm not going to be Steven Spielberg or any of these other big movie creators, or I never assumed I was going to be a Trey Ratcliffe or another big time photographer. So I said, I'm just going to make the most of what I have and just see if I can grow. And at the time, I couldn't go out and buy brand new DSLRs and things like that. So I'll just use what you got and maximize it as best I could. And that's what I did. And it just became a passion. And then it just got to a point where I felt I should go ahead and share this stuff because people continue to ask, how do you do this? How did you do that? And I just wrote the blogs and said, you know what, I need to get into this and start sharing more. And as I'm sharing more, I'm learning more about myself and realized this video worked better than the other one because there was a storyline with it. It wasn't just a meme. Memes are really popular, but memes are, and this is going to sound crass, memes are viral. Virals don't last forever. There's no legacy behind viral. I'd like to create something that's going to stand up a couple of years later, not just be a bit of a one-hit wonder. And the only thing that does that are good stories. And so I just tried to dive into it more from a storyteller's perspective, and even down with my photographs, I said, you know what, I don't want to take snapshots. I got to stop taking snapshots. And I look back at the old things that I used to shoot, and there were so many snapshots in there, and I cringe, but it's okay. It was part of the learning process, and I got better at learning how to work on my framing and learning how to look at different angles, different point of view and perspective, and it would tell a different story based on your framing, based on the perspective. And if you turn it into a video mode, it just made it even more dynamic. If you looked at the different perspectives and the different angles, or nowadays different shutter speed, things like that.
That's amazing. There's something that you just said about the perspective and the story that I kind of want you to elaborate a little more on. Because, but first of all, if you don't mind, what is, just for our listeners, explain what is the difference between a photograph and a snapshot?
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at, all right, from as far as photographs and snapshots. Snapshots are photographs. I will say that. But a compelling photograph is not a snapshot. If you look at social media, 90% of the images you're going to see in your feed are snapshots, depending on who you follow. If you follow a bunch of professional photographers, they're not going to give you a lot of snapshots. They're going to give you an image that they sat down with the camera and thought about the framing. They thought about the mood that they're trying to invoke, thought about the post-processing and all of that. And typically the really good ones, they've gone through that thought process within a few seconds or a few minutes, like really, really quickly. And click the shutter and boom, you have this image. And then they most of the time throw it into post-processing, whether it's Photoshop, Lightroom, Affinity Photo, or what have you, to enhance the vision that they had when they snapped that photograph. Now, compare that to a snapshot. Selfies. A lot of selfies are snapshots. It is what it is. It's just a snap in time, and there's nothing else to it. I was here. People that take photographs of their food at dinner time. It's a snapshot. It's just, this is what I had for dinner. Now, take a food photographer. Okay. A food photographer crafts that shot. They will put down the plate in a certain angle. They will move the berries 20 degrees left. They will spritz water droplets on the food. They will make sure that they have lighting that's 90 degrees to the right and it's diffused, because they're trying to show a specific mood. They're trying to show a specific time of day that you can look at that and see, oh, this is breakfast time. This is what breakfast is supposed to look like. I wonder what that tastes like. So it just evokes a lot of different emotions, and it makes you ask a lot of different questions, and it just makes you dig a little bit deeper about the shot. Whereas with the selfie, you see that selfie and you tap on it and you scroll. You just keep scrolling. That's the difference. Snapshots, you'll tap it for the like and you keep scrolling. But a photograph, you'll stop and you'll look at it. You'll comment on it and you'll look at it one more time, and then you'll scroll away. And you spent 5 times more time on that photograph versus that snapshot. So the next time you're scrolling through Instagram, check out your behavior with it. Because I know I do the same thing. And there's so many times my thumb is just worn out from swiping and scrolling so much because there's so many snapshots in there. But you'll notice when something stops you. It could be something that's very personal to someone. And the image may be, from a technicality standpoint, not all that great. But it made you stop because there was a story there. And I'm not just talking about the caption that they write, if anything, but it made you stop. And that's the difference between a snapshot and a nice storytelling, captivating photograph.
There is a relationship. There's always a relationship between. There's like 3 characters behind every photo. There's your subject, which could be a person. There's the lens, right? And then there's you, and the perspective is yours, but it really carries through all the way into that particular photograph or video or whatever it is that you're getting. And I think by, people have a relationship, and you can tell with their cameras, whether it's a mobile camera, right, or not.
Mm-hmm.
I like, for example, it's very hard for me to go somewhere and not shoot photos,
Yeah.
and I have photos that I've, you know, ever since I was a kid, I would take, photographs of things, and it was more about the act of taking a photo than it was anyways, for me to go back and look at those photos. There are a lot of photos that I've shot over the last, let me just say, this 1 year, right? There's a lot of
Okay.
photos that I shot this year that, unless I bump into it later, I haven't gone back to look at. And I think
Right.
that has a lot to do with, like, remember when we used to print photos?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
Mm-hmm.
sit in these photo albums. Like, I know my parents had photo albums, and
Yep.
every once in a while I'd go to their house and I would open up one of those things. But I didn't have that. It wasn't, but it still was sort of like bumping into it,
Yep.
But there's something, there's a little bit of some energy or some vibe or something that, while you're taking that photograph, just, if you can't move the subject, like, for example, if it's a tree, you can't move the tree to get good lighting, right, on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you move yourself around until it looks right. And
Mm-hmm.
there's that interaction. It's almost like a relationship, and then you capture it. And then you look at it, you do look at it while, maybe for the rest of that day, you'll look at it a few times. But then once you, like, file it, right, basically, you don't look at
Mm-hmm.
it too much. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree with you 100%. And I've had a very similar discussion about this in the past. Printing photos did make a difference for people, but most photographers in general, it's no different from a bodybuilder that feels the need to work out, or a fitness pro that just feels the need to just hit the gym. They're in damn good shape already, but they are sick when they can't get into that gym or go get that morning run in or that evening run in. Photographers are the same way. It is a way of exercising a different set of muscles where you're framing up the shot and working on your craft and checking out the light at this hour, checking out the dew and the mist at this hour, and and studying scenes that you've walked over a gazillion times and noticed that it's different every single time. It's just in us, and that's when people really, really love photography, because you'll go through those motions and those repetitions, and you may look at those shots one time and that's it, and you leave it and you don't share it. There's so many pictures on my computer right now, terabytes and terabytes of images that no one has ever seen or ever will see, because that's not what they were for. They were for me. It was just me in the act. And similar to you, that motion just really does excite me. But even beyond that, I'm more excited about the actual processing part of it than the final image. I always have been. I don't know why, but I feel that way about photographs, and I feel that way about video as well. I love sitting in Premiere. I love going through figuring out how I'd like to make cuts. I'd love going through and figuring out how I would like to color grade at this particular scene. It just, before even thinking about it being uploaded or published or anything like that, I'm just, oh man, I love this spot. Just it's just my happy place.
Yeah, it's like a turn on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It is.
I used to do a lot of event. I used to get paid for it, but I would do them anyways. Event videos.
Yep.
During event videos, what really is exciting is that there's a lot there, and it's always moving. And one of the things that I knew that my clients loved to get photos of is so with videos, it's when people are talking and they're excited because when event videos are you're basically capturing a lot of B-roll, and the B-roll is always adding. So if you know your client is putting on this event, they want to see happy people, active, interacting. So I would do, right. So, and I knew because then I not only was I the videographer, I was also the editor as well sometimes, and I would have to put together a lot of B-roll that were really they ended up liking in the cut was the shots of people interacting, even if the camera was moving around them, but showing their hands and their eyes looking intently into one another and laughing and smiling, or having deep conversations that even if they weren't smiling, you could tell in their eyes, that they were in tune with each other. And the hand movements when someone's behind a microphone and they're talking vibrantly. But with the photographs, those over the shoulder shot, there's a thing about distance. You ever seen those movies where you see someone chasing someone, like a cop chasing someone, right? And from a particular angle from behind, it looks like they're right on top of each other. But then you see them from across the street and they've got like a mile in between. So exactly. So when I was shooting for that, I always like shooting up close and getting people over the shoulder and things because it looks like they're standing so much closer together than when you're capturing them from the side talking to one another, from a distance. But I think my excitement with event videos was actually that videos and photographs. And now when we have our film festival, I sometimes forget, our Aaron Nabuz, who's our brand ambassador, part of the team. He's usually there with he uses a Samsung. It's an Android. And he also has an iPhone. So sometimes he sets up the iPhone on the tripod, but he's, his favorite is his Android phone, right? And it actually comes out nicer. And I don't know why, but the Samsung always ends up coming out. I think it's because it's newer than his iPhone. And he's capturing the video, and sometimes while there's someone up on stage, talking, making announcements and presentations, I'm sort of on the side and I'm pulling out my phone and taking pictures of them from my point of view, being next to them at the same time. And I don't realize that I'm being captured doing that. And I always laugh. It's like, oh, there's me, like taking, which is, it's not something you see too often.
Whoops,
I mean, I
saw
don't.
me doing that.
It's like, oh, geez, But then those are different perspectives that are kind of cool later. So I'm kind of my own little event photographer, even though we have them. What is your favorite type of photography and videography that you prefer doing, say, with iPhone, or not iPhones, but whatever you use? What is your smartphone?
Sure. My smartphone now, at this time of recording, is the Pixel 4 XL.
Oh, those come out with some really good photos too.
It's a really nice camera. The phone is way overpriced. It's not worth what it was priced, but the camera is still really, really great on this thing. But my favorite genre for photography is still street photography. I love it. Granted, I do love landscape, but street photography is the best because of it's just so many stories there. I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I would love to go to downtown Charlotte and shoot street photography because what some people don't realize is Charlotte, North Carolina is like one of the financial capitals of the U.S. I think it's like number 2 right behind Wall Street in New York. So you have a lot of bankers walking around. You have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of happy bankers walking around. You have a lot of stressed bankers walking around. A lot of big business happening there. And it was always fun for me to go to Charlotte and I would camp out on a corner, essentially. A lot of street photographers will walk and walk and walk and shoot as they're walking. And I do that from time to time. But with Charlotte, there was a particular corner that I love to camp out on and just go there first thing in the morning and watch the people as they're arriving for work. And you get all of the different emotions and story of people arriving to work, people arriving for work on time, people arriving for work late, people arriving for work hungover. So that's four different scenarios, and you can imagine the different appearances of the people that
Yeah.
are probably going to the same building, probably going to the same job, but you got four different appearances and expressions that you're dealing with. And then you take that and flip it to lunchtime. People are coming out starving, when they're hungry. People are coming out a little bit relieved. Like, thank goodness I needed this break. And then when they're going back to lunch, that's another story. And then you have the story of people at the end of the day. I know the typical hours of work for most people, they assume it's 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Well, what about the people that don't get out at 5 p.m.? So you have the story of the people getting out at 5 p.m. and the looks on their faces, and they're elated or they're angry because they may have just gotten fired.
Oh.
The deal didn't go through that they were trying to make. Or you even have the people that didn't get out at 5 o'clock and you see them again at 5:30 or 6 p.m. and they're angry because they couldn't get out earlier. Or take that, this is the end of the day on a Friday going into the weekend. And that's a whole other story because everybody's looking forward to happy hour and Friday night and the weekend, and you won't see hardly any down faces on that particular day. So street photography is just like a gold mine for beautiful images and stories. Just you can't go shoot street photography and come up empty handed. It's almost impossible. And you can do the same thing with video because you have the perspective of shooting the low angles and just watching the feet. I know this sounds weird, but watch the feet
That's true.
of the people going to work, and you can see the cadence. Just see how fast they're walking, trying to get to the office on time. Watch the same people leaving. They're not moving as fast. It's a little bit more leisurely. I'm done for the day. So I don't have to rush to my car. Unless there's someone that lives way on the other side of the town and they're trying to beat the traffic, but it's a different cadence.
It's true. I remember the opening of some of the old movies where they would open up the scene, the street, the hustle and the bustle with the feet.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
guys and the women with their skirts and the guys with
Mm-hmm.
their slacks and their shiny shoes type thing.
Yep. Oh yeah.
On the sidewalks. Wow. And see, when you said street photography, you know what I pictured? I was picturing something like in San Diego where you see like street art, basically.
Okay. Yeah,
And
that's part of it too.
yeah, just like in when we had our launch of our mobile film school here in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
one of the projects that I just threw this out there. I was like, hey, I have an idea for a project. We were downtown in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
and the deal was that shooting all the different doors and windows
Okay.
to every structure that we came along. And then we would put them all together in one sequence. And so you could see the difference in between them. And there were so many different, you wouldn't imagine this. They're just doors and windows.
Right.
And they were all different. Some of them were, some of them were tagged, some of them were old and rustic.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were like brand new and just very generic looking, and others, just depending on the angle that they were shot, looked pretty cool. It was also a little. It was almost sunset time, so the lighting was sort of changing as well at the end of that day. And then we stopped at Starbucks and, broke out our laptops and put it in iMovie,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was picturing when you were saying that. But so basically it's the people though, right? That you like.
Most of the time it is the people, because if you're not including people in your street photography, there's a lot of other variables that you have to depend on to get the story. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
Say that I want to take a nice photograph of a wall that's got this mural on it. Depending on the time of day that I go there, that mural is not going to look as good because of the lighting. It's not going to look as good if there's a gazillion people walking past it trying to get to the venue and things like that. It takes away from it potentially. So yeah, I have no problem with shooting different inanimate objects as part of street photography, or walls or mural or art that I see, statues and things like that, because it is all a part of it. But I get more joy out of shooting people because it's a lot more candid, and it can be quite entertaining at times when you look at it from my perspective, because I have no idea what's going through their head at that time, but I could take a guess based on the exposure that I captured,
True. Well, and if you're on a public street, I just have this thing. It's part of my video work where I'm always asking permission, even in public, for people. But now, years ago, it was hard to just walk into a store and shoot videos and take photos and things like that. They would get mad. They would tell you not
Right.
to do that because, you're shopping
need a
for the
permit.
competition or something, right?
Yeah, need a permit.
Yeah. Well, that too. But I mean, inside of retail stores and things like that, they thought you were from the competition, right? And you were coming in there to see what they had on sale, and then you were going to go and beat that price at, with your
Of
boss.
course.
But nowadays, and I still ask, it's their property, you know what I mean? It's their business. So I still ask, is it okay if I think it was like Petco or something. There were turtles in a fish tank. And I was like, is it okay if I get a little video of your turtles? They were like little baby ninja turtles. And they were like, yeah, why are you asking? So now I'm the weirdo that stands out. But a long time ago, it was completely the opposite,
It's totally different from what it used to be.
Yeah, it really is. It's to be expected. But it makes it, now we're getting into the point with all the, the gear, the gimbals and the microphones and, all these things where someone could be vlogging, but maybe they're just like doing something for their personal YouTube, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're experimenting. So now we're at this little bit of a revolving door where people don't know really what's going on,
I think but the thing is, I believe this can go both ways. It's definitely changed from years ago, but at the same time, social media has heightened the interest of the bystanders, if you will, because some people are assuming that you're a threat to them. And I'm not saying a physical threat, but just a threat to their privacy.
Right.
And I understand that, and I can't speak for other photographers, but for myself, when I'm doing the street photography, I am purposely, this is actually whenever I'm out, I'm purposely wearing bright colors. I usually have on like an orange t-shirt, orange sweatshirt, something of that nature. I'm 6'2", 230 pounds, black dude, bald head. I stand out already, but I tried to put a orange sweatshirt on, or orange t-shirt on, or something like that, just so they know I am there. And yes, I have a camera in my hands. And a lot of times just that brutal honesty diffuses potential situations of uncomfort for people. So they know I'm shooting, and they know that I'm not trying to hide and do something, mischievous with it. It's just, I'm out there for the art.
Yeah.
And if they're children, I don't shoot children. Heck,
Right.
matter of fact, most of the time I don't shoot faces. Most of the time, but every now and then I do shoot faces, and when I do, I try to shoot it at the perspective to where they still have their privacy guarded. You can see that there's a person there, and you can see an expression, but you may not know that person. It may be debatable who that person is.
Yeah.
But when it's children, I try my best not to shoot images of children, just because of what has happened with online perverts and things like that. So,
Well, even in schools, like, I've taught mobile filmmaking in schools.
yeah.
And I always get the permission from parents before I do anything. And I remember I was at one school. It was like a middle high school or something. And there were like 60 kids in the room. They brought in 2 separate classrooms to hear my thing.
Right.
And in the photos, I went back and I blurred their faces where you could see them.
Right.
Because I didn't have the permissions.
No consent.
And exactly. Even though the teacher and the kids all said it was fine, I said, yeah, but, for example, there's divorce, right?
Yep.
And there are parents whose children the children may not even know it, that
Yeah.
are sort of not, you have to get consent from both legal guardians. Sometimes if parents are divorced, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying it. There's scenarios that I probably respect more than random people do sometimes when it comes to these things, because I know how these things work and I really have a respect for people. So when it comes to kids, even though sometimes one parent will say, yeah, it's fine, I'm still kind of like, And a lot of people don't know that in public, children, you don't have the right to include them. Where adults, hey, you're in public, you're walking my way, you see I'm I got a camera in front of me, and
Public
you're still
street.
doing it. Yeah. But when it comes to minors, no, it's not okay, And a lot of people don't know that. And I think they should be listening to this podcast to know.
They will know now.
Right? Talk a little bit about branding and marketing, because you're really good at this.
I think I got you fooled.
Call me a happy fool then.
Oh, man. Well, I appreciate that. But branding is, I hate it that a lot of people confuse branding with logos. It's not the same. A logo is, it's a part of your brand, but your logo isn't your brand. And people have to understand that branding is your message, your mission that goes along with everything that you do in your business. It goes along with how you create your art. It goes along with how you present your art to the masses. It goes along with how you service clients or how you prospect for potential clients, how you work off of referrals, how you work with the rest of the creative community. It is who you are. It is your core being, that is your brand. The simplest way to break that down is some people, their brand is being a jackass. They are what they are. And then there are other people that are just, their brand is, they're the nicest people you ever meet. That is their brand,
Yeah.
That's the simplest way to put it, but there's a lot more nuance where you take let's say, take an Apple, since we were talking about iPhone. Take an Apple. Yeah. Apple's brand is a brand of excellence. When you look at Apple's, let's just take their hardware out of the picture. Don't even look at their iPhone. Don't even look at their MacBook or the iMac or any of that. Look at the box that it comes in. It is white, black lettering or gray lettering. Very little extra information on that box.
Even the cardboard is classy.
Right. Everything is so simple and clean because it says, you know what, we don't have to cover up all of our mistakes and imperfections. We're just going to give you this beautiful, clean box that's going to have an amazing product in it. All right, so that's one thing. That's their branding. Their branding is excellence. And they stand behind that all the way down to, we'll take a look at the hardware. We'll look at, say, the old Apple Mac from like the 1980s, or the old Apple IIe. Apple cared so much about the excellence to where if you cracked open those computer cases, the wiring was arranged pretty just unbelievably clean and neat. They didn't want the wires to just be sort of thrown in there as everything was being connected to the motherboard. Steve Jobs was pretty adamant about, we want this to look good on the outside, but we also want it to look good on the inside, because if you take care of the inside, you know the outside's going to be good. You know, it's just a bit of pride. It's a bit of excellence. That's the Apple brand. It's not just the fact that they have iPhones.
Right,
You know,
right.
their brand goes beyond the iPhone, you know, and that's the difference between knowing what your brand is and what your mantra is, if you will, and putting it out there versus just, I made a logo for myself.
Right. What if say one of our listeners is starting, because it gets confusing. So let's say a film is a product, a movie is a product.
Yep.
Just like your photos are a product of you, basically, right?
Right.
And so, you know, would they create? I see a lot of filmmakers who, not just mobile filmmakers or anything, just filmmakers, right? They create a, say, Twitter or Facebook page just for that film. And my advice is always to just brand that as yourself, as a part of yourself, unless you have a company, right? That you want to brand. But even if you have a company, then you have a page for that company that has products, each film, instead of just doing each. What would you say about that to our listeners? And you can totally contradict me. I'm fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It depends. It depends, because I agree with you to a certain extent. Let's take Michael Bay. All right, Michael Bay is an incredible director, and his brand is just how well he directs his movies, even down to the infamous, not Michael Bay, J.J. Abrams.
Oh, okay.
Comes down to the infamous lens flare. Whenever you say J.J. Abrams, people in the creative side of the world, they always think of lens flare, because all of his movies just have a touch of lens flare in whatever scene it is, no matter what. It looks good to him, and that's what he likes to put in there.
It's
So
like
he's
his
got
signature, right?
Right. It's his signature. So he has his brand of how he does work, and if he was to do social media pages, he'll have a page for himself. He's going to have a page for the Transformers movie. Okay. Then he's going to have another page for the I don't know what I can't think of another movie off the top of my head, but say his movie from 2015, that'll be another page.
Right.
He's not going to lump those two together, because it's two separate products, and it's a whole lot of different analytics behind it as far as marketing goes, and they can track all that to help build upon the next product that he's trying to put together and get that marketing squared away. And then you go back to his personal page, he will mention, go check out my page for the movie from 2015. Okay, go check out my page for the movie from 2018. He'll mention those two different products on his personal brand, but he's separating them out into two different silos for his own analytics. You know, that's stuff that can be used to help build up the next piece of the puzzle, the next product for him. And some people can get away with that, some cannot. Personally, speaking from my own experience, I have my own LLC and things of that nature, but I keep everything under one roof for me because I think I am my products. Yes,
Right.
I create art, but in addition to that art, you're also buying me. When it comes down to, hey, I'd like to order one of your prints. Okay, you're also ordering a piece of Aunt Pruitt. That's about how I look at it. So I lump everything together, and I work pretty hard on my brand. Saying, this is what I created, and my mantra of I'm out here just trying to create art, but I'm also trying to dominate the opposition in front of me. And I'm not saying I'm trying to be better than the Glenn Dewises of the world or the Rick Salmons of the world or anything like that. That's not what I mean by dominate the opposition. My opposition is Photoshop doesn't want to act right today, but I'm not going to let Photoshop whoop me.
Seize
You
the
know,
day with Photoshop.
just this.
Yeah.
That's just how I go at it. I'm having at the time of recording this, I am struggling right now as we speak. My mouth and face is sore because I had oral surgery last week. I had to have a tooth
Oh,
removed. But I'm going to dominate my day regardless of this headache, regardless of my mouth being sore. I'm going to do this podcast because I'm freaking happy to be here and honored to be here, and I'm going to dominate this podcast.
well,
So
you
that's my
you
mantra.
beyond dominated. You rocked it.
Oh, come on. But no, but
Seriously.
that's what I'm saying when
Yeah.
when it comes to my brand and when someone wants to partake in any of my creative works, whether it's my podcast or any ordering prints or asking me to come and do a promo video for their small business or something like that, they're getting that final product, but they're also getting me and the work that I put into it that's behind the scenes and the sweat and the love and the moments of me smiling to myself and I say, oh man, this looks good,
Yeah.
while I'm in the edit bay. That's branding, and that's just my mantra with it.
That's the art, and we were talking about that in photography earlier.
Hmm.
You're living that moment.
That's it.
You're making the best of that moment. Like when you're behind the camera, or for me, or for our listeners who may be
Hmm.
behind the camera. Um, we're getting close to an hour, and now that I hear that you just went through oral surgery too.
No,
Um,
you're good. Don't worry.
Jeez.
I can talk all night. It's all good.
Okay. Well, then let's go for another 3 hours. No, I think our listeners
Gotcha.
would be like, what?
I can
Don't.
do it.
Yeah, I've had some podcasts, some episodes, and some of our listeners know this, have gone. I think the last one was like an hour and 20 minutes.
Mhm.
I think that was probably
What
one
was
of the
the
longest
lady?
ones.
Can't remember the lady's name, but I remember listening to it.
Yes, Kimberly Hart
She
from.
had the funny accent. Was she
She
Australian or New
she's
Zealand?
well, actually, she's from New Zealand, but she lives in Australia.
Okay.
Yes, and she was here in San Diego actually, and she was, you know, it's just ironic how the last live event film festival that we had. And I'm not going to say the last, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
But it was just so amazingly epic, right? Just to sound like a dork here, but it was just epic because it turned out to be so wonderful, and everyone that came, right, got along. It was like bringing family in from all over the place, right?
Mhm.
That hadn't seen each other in years, even though these people had never seen each other in person before. And they walked away feeling it was almost emotional, when everybody was saying goodbye. It was like
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
goodbye to your friends who you don't know when you're going to see again.
Yep.
But at least there's social media to keep everyone in touch.
Right.
And they do, and that was part of the vibe that was there that made everything so epic. But anyways, yes, that was an hour and a half podcast. I got a little game I want to play with you. Would you like to play a game?
uh, Ooh, should I be nervous?
I didn't even tell you about this. Um,
Sure,
it's
I'm
a
in.
20-second shout out game.
Okay.
So basically, totally, this is why I try to surprise you with this because have you ever been to the Oscars, when they give you the award?
No,
Right? Um,
don't
but
think I have.
right.
I'll see if I
Um,
can go there next year, though.
well, remember last year when you received the Emmy? Well, and you're getting behind the microphone and you have to thank everybody, right? And you're giving shout outs to people, and then they start playing the music like, hello, wrap it up. It's kind of like that. But what happens is like, what people don't tell you is like when they get away from the microphone and they go sit back down with everybody, they're like, that night or later, they get a text. Mom, it's like, I can't believe you didn't name me.
Oh man, yeah. I've
Oh
seen those
no,
stories.
I was going to name you. You were on my list, right? So the 20-second shout out gives you a chance, totally put on the spot.
Hmm.
And if anybody says, I can't believe you didn't give me a shout out, it's like, she only gave me 20 seconds and put me on the spot. So are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. So, and you don't have to time this. I'm doing all the work, all the tough work I'm doing on this end.
Oh, thank goodness.
All right. And go.
All right, my mother, my family here in my household, because they have to deal with me working long hours and deal with me doing weird things with the camera, all at the snap of a finger. And all of my loyal listeners that are subscribed to my channel, as well as all of the loyal listeners on the Twit network.
Oh, that's it.
That was easy. That
That
was
was
easy.
that was easy. You actually, I was going, oh, you named your mother, right? First. Um, she won't be texting you.
Oh no, she won't text me for this more than likely. She texts me for other things. She'll catch me on air. You need to iron your shirt, boy. Stuff like that.
My mom will actually message me only on Facebook anymore. She just messages me there, going, "Boy, that photo on. Why are you so happy?" I'm
Love
happy,
it.
Mom. I'm happy.
Love it. Love it.
Well, I want you to, one thing that I want to let our listeners know, go to the notes and check out all the million different ways that you can follow Ant. Uh, we'll have links to everything there. But also, you can follow Ant Pruitt. Why don't you just give out your Twitter, your Twitter handle,
Hmm. Hmm.
and your Instagram?
Sure. It's very easy. I am Ant_Pruitt on both Twitter and on Instagram. Pretty easy to find. Well, I shouldn't say that, considering people are tagging the wrong Ant Pruitt from time to time. So yeah, Ant_Pruitt.
It's the underscore. That's probably why.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other thing that I want people to know, that if you go to, let me see, what is your website again? It's very simple. It's antpruitt.com.
That's
Spell
it.
it. Spell it.
That's Ant as in the insect, and my last name Pruitt. P is in Paul. R-U-I. T is in Tom. T is in Tom. Antpruitt.com.
Awesome. Stop
Lots of
saying
stuff
that your
there.
name is like an insect. You're so far from being an insect.
Well, I have to say it that way because people just assume that my name is really, really strange when it's just a shortened version of my name. That's all.
Right? It's true. But I think, remember the musician, the singer Adam Ant?
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, from the 80s.
And I say, yeah, just think of Adam Ant.
There you go, right? Most people won't even know who we're talking about, though. Most of the younger
Yeah.
people, anyways.
Yeah, nowadays.
Yeah. Although, it's a thing to be into the 80s and vintagey and all that. So,
Yeah, hippies.
hippies. Let me ask you one last question. If you
Sure.
had some serious, not that you haven't been serious, but heartfelt advice for an artist trying to make it with all this digital tech stuff, and they just have a story they want to share,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make a film with their phone,
Mm-hmm.
what would your advice be?
My very first advice with this is forget about the equipment. It's actually two parts. Forget about the equipment, because your equipment is good enough to tell a story. I don't care what it is. As long as it's not a potato, it's good enough to tell a story. And secondly, don't think about the money. Don't think about the accolades. Don't think about the numbers. Just think about your story. Concentrate on that and make that story really, really shine and come out in your voice. And as long as you do that, all of that other stuff that I said not to think about, it'll be there. It'll come. It just does. The second that I quit worrying about stats, analytics, and things like that, my career just kept changing. And I still live that way. I don't look at all of that stuff anymore. And I'm the happiest dude on the planet.
That's awesome. And with that, say goodbye to everybody.
Hey, everybody, goodbye, but please be well, but most of all, do well.